You drift from yourself, and the more you talk, the emptier you become. I'm not the one saying this. It was told by a man who lived in a barrel, urinated in public, and mocked the world while the world tried to understand him. Diogenes was a philosopher who wasn't looking to please, fit in, or much less be remembered. And yet, here we are, centuries later, talking about him. Why? Because while most people struggled to be part of the crowd, he chose to be a spectator of collective stupidity. And you know what he said? That the more sociable you are, the stupider you become. Does that sound exaggerated? Perfect. Because that means this video is for you. You who laugh even though you don't understand the joke. You who greet others even when you don't want to. You who pretend interest out of fear of not being accepted. You've fallen into the most perverse trap of our era, social hyperconnectivity. And the worst part? You don't even notice it. Every word you say to belong, every silence you choose. To avoid discomfort, every gesture, every laugh, every damn Instagram story. It's nothing but bricks in the invisible prison you've built around your mind. Want the truth? You no longer know who you are when no one is watching. What if I told you that all that noise, all those friendships, all those gatherings, aren't bringing you closer to wisdom, but pushing you into the abyss of emotional stupidity? I'm not talking about the stupidity of not knowing how to add fractions. I'm talking about true stupidity, the one that makes you forget the essentials, the one that forces you to betray yourself with a smile, the one that turns you into a slave of the superficial, of the group, of the what will they say. Have you ever wondered why, when you're alone, you feel strange, uncomfortable, empty? It's because you're not used to inhabiting your mind without the echo of others. You don't know how to think without borrowed opinions. You don't know how to decide without looking around. And that's no coincidence. Society doesn't want strong individuals. It wants functional pieces, and for a piece to work, it needs to fit in. To fit in, you have to smooth your edges. And do you know what those edges are? Your judgment, your identity, your truth? But let's go further. Why do you think the smartest people in history were loners? Coincidence? I don't think so. Because thinking deeply requires silence, and silence is at war with sociability. In this video, you won't find advice to be more liked by others. I'm not going to teach you how to be more charismatic, have social skills, or stand out in groups. On the contrary, I'm going to tell you why all that can be the most refined form of self-betrayal. Because sometimes, being the life of the party is the price you pay for not having your soul. Diogenes didn't hate people. He just despised the farce. He knew that where there is too much word, there is little truth. Where there is too much company, there is little judgment. And he didn't say it from the comfort of an armchair or a university lectern. He said it, living like an animal but thinking like a god. So tell me, to what extent are your relationships truly yours and not a reflection of your fear of being alone? This video is going to shake you. It's not comfortable, it's not kind. But if you stay, maybe you'll begin to see sociability for what it is, a disguise. One we all wear, and few dare to take off. Get ready. Because from this moment on, you're going to start distrusting every conversation, every shared laugh, every automatic gesture, not because they're fake, but because you don't know how much of yourself you are sacrificing in them. And it's important to understand that it's not about rejecting the world or retreating from every social interaction. It's not about becoming a hermit. It's about realizing how much of your authentic self gets lost in the crowd. Sociability, when used as a mask, becomes a tool of self-destruction. You begin to mold yourself to fit into patterns that are not your own. Your desires, opinions, and dreams fade into the background, and what remains is just the version of you that others expect to see. This is the truth that Diogenes understood. He didn't conform to society's expectations, and in doing so, he became more than just a philosopher. He became an embodiment of true freedom. It's that kind of freedom that allows you to exist without the need for constant validation, to think without the weight of others' opinions, to be comfortable with who you are, even when no one else is around. Ask yourself then, how often do you lose yourself in the noise of the world? How often do you change your views just to avoid discomfort or rejection? The truth is, most of us are more concerned with maintaining our social status and fitting into the mold society has created than with actually knowing who we are. We're afraid of the silence, the void, that comes with being alone with our thoughts. But it's in that silence that the true work begins. It's in the moments when we're alone with ourselves that we can hear our voice, unfiltered, untainted by the expectations of others. And only in that space can we reclaim our thoughts, our identity, and our freedom. So what are you willing to do to reclaim that freedom? To stop being another face in the crowd, lost in the noise? The first step is to stop fearing isolation. Diogenes wasn't isolated because he hated people. He chose isolation because he understood that only in solitude could he think freely. He wasn't afraid of being alone with his thoughts. Are you? This isn't an easy journey, but it's a necessary one. To break free from the chains of social validation, you must first become comfortable with your own company. You must learn to embrace silence, not as an enemy, but as a tool for self-discovery. It's in this silence that you'll find clarity and the strength to live authentically, without the constant pressure of fitting in. This video won't tell you how to win friends or influence people. Instead, it will challenge you to rethink what it means to truly live on your terms. Because the more you conform to others' expectations, the further you move away from your true self. And once you realize that, you'll begin to see sociability, not as a social necessity, but as a trap designed to make you forget who you are. This isn't misanthropy, it's lucidity. It's a journey to the most uncomfortable part of the human condition. The fear of isolation and how that fear slowly turns you into one more copy of the system you said you wanted to question. Because the more sociable you are, the stupider you can become. And if that bothers you, it's because deep down you know there's some truth here. Welcome. This is not a video. It's a fracture. And what you decide to do with it will no longer be with the voice of others in your head. It will be on your own. Ready to lose friends and gain clarity? Perfect. Then don't leave, because what comes next isn't a lesson. It's a mirror. One that not everyone is prepared to look into. Do you know the deepest problem of all this? Most don't even realize they're being domesticated. That's the scariest part. You don't need shackles when the subject kneels on their own. You don't need a cell if the mind prefers the crowd to freedom. And here comes the next enemy. A quieter one, more elegant, more insidious, social validation. It's the drug no one admits to consuming. No one tells you, I want to be approved. No, that would be too honest. Instead, they post smiles, dress a certain way, and adopt opinions like someone puts on a shirt just to fit into a mold they don't even question. Validation isn't a compliment. It's an addiction. And that's where stupidity begins to seem sensible. Because to be validated, you have to be understandable, predictable, and comfortable. And nothing is more comfortable for others than someone who thinks like them. Validation doesn't require intelligence, it requires conformity. And the more you seek it, the more you diminish your ability to think for yourself. Because real thinking, deep thinking, is dangerous. It distances you from the group. It makes you strange. It turns you into an outcast. And what does a human do when they start to feel out of place? They give in. They adapt. They give up their inner voice to not lose external approval. And right there, right then, is when the stupidity begins. The mind cannot be sharp when it's waiting for applause. Critical thinking isn't born in applause. It's born in conflict. But conflict scares. Because it's uncomfortable. Because it's lonely. Because it forces you to see yourself without social makeup. Look around you. Observe people. Notice how they laugh in unison, how they repeat ideas without digesting them, how they defend causes they don't understand just because they're trendy. Do you think that's intelligence? It's not. It's obedience with a smile. And here comes the hardest part of all. The smarter you are, the more at risk you are of becoming stupid if you choose to live to be accepted. Because real intelligence implies dissidence. It implies stepping aside. It implies saying what no one wants to hear. But that's not rewarded. That's punished. How? With society's favorite weapon, symbolic isolation. They no longer exile you physically. Now they silence you with indifference, with soft cancellations, with that uncomfortable void that appears when you don't follow the script. And most can't stand it. They'd rather get lost in the crowd than face the desert of authenticity. Want brutal proof of this? Watch what happens when someone in a group expresses an unpopular opinion. You see it on their face. Doubt, self-correction, trying to soften it. They know they're touching a nerve, and they're not afraid of being wrong. They're afraid of being alone. That's the point. We no longer live in fear of error. We live in fear of isolation. It's a subtle but dangerous shift. We are no longer as concerned with making mistakes, failing, or being wrong. What we fear now is being out of sync with the group and being excluded from the herd. The primal need for belonging, for being accepted, becomes more important than our authentic self-expression. And that's where the trap lies. It's not the error itself that's harmful. It's the fear of standing alone, the fear of dissent, the fear of being the one who doesn't conform. What happens when you start to notice this? When you start to see how much of your life, your thoughts, and your decisions are shaped by the need for social validation, you realize that you've been playing a game where the rules were never yours to begin with. You've been adapting, compromising, and shaping yourself into something that fits neatly within the comfort zones of others. But in doing so, you've lost touch with who you are. You've lost the ability to think freely, independently, because you've been conditioned to think like the group, to share opinions like the group, to laugh at the same jokes, to nod along even when you don't agree. But true thinking, real insight, requires a willingness to be different. It requires the courage to stand alone, to say something others won't, and to refuse to conform. And yet, for most of us, the fear of being alone is so powerful that we'd rather drown out our inner voice than face the discomfort of standing apart. This is where you must ask yourself, how much of what I say, do, or believe is truly mine, and how much of it is simply a reflection of the expectations of others? How much of what I've created is shaped by the fear of being excluded? Because when you let the fear of exclusion rule your life, when you begin to shape yourself to fit into a mold that isn't truly yours, you start to lose the essence of what makes you unique, what makes you valuable. You become just another cog in the machine, just another voice in the chorus, repeating the same things everyone else is saying, doing the same things everyone else is doing, without ever truly questioning why. Real intelligence, real freedom, is about thinking for yourself, even when it's uncomfortable. It's about challenging the status quo, even when it costs you social approval. It's about refusing to bend to the will of the group, even if it means standing alone. So, if this resonates with you, if something inside you stirs with every word, then you're on the right path. But be warned, this path is not easy. It's not for the faint of heart. It requires courage, strength, and a willingness to face the uncomfortable truth that to be truly free, you must be willing to stand alone, to be misunderstood, and to let go of the need for approval. And when you do, you'll begin to realize something profound. You were never meant to fit in. You were meant to stand out. You were meant to think for yourself. And in doing so, you will find that the more you embrace your individuality, the more you'll find others who will truly appreciate you for who you are, not for the mask you wear. Want brutal proof of this? Watch what happens when someone in a group expresses an unpopular opinion. You see it on their face, doubt, self-correction, trying to soften it. They know they're touching a nerve, and they're not afraid of being wrong. They're afraid of being alone. That's the point. We no longer live in fear of error. We live in fear of isolation. And you know who didn't have that fear? Diogenes. Because he understood that freedom isn't doing whatever you want, but not fearing to be alone with your convictions. So, tell me, how much of what you think is truly yours? How many ideas have you taken simply because they surrounded you? How many times have you kept quiet about what you thought to not upset a Group you don't even respect? Validation is the most sophisticated form of submission. And you think you're communicating, but in reality, you're giving up. You think you're sharing your thoughts, but you're just serving a menu adapted to the group's taste. Intelligence isn't measured by what you know, but by what you're willing to defend, even when no one else does. But that has a price. The price of exclusion. Judgment whispers behind your back. And here the trap is revealed. Sociability is not neutral. It's not just a way of living together. It's a net designed to soften the edges of the mind, to make you more acceptable, yes, but also more manageable. That's why it's so damn hard to be brilliant and social at the same time, because part of you is always in conflict. The part that wants to question, and the part that wants to belong. And when that conflict becomes unbearable, you choose comfort. And that's where stupidity begins. Not stupidity of ignorance, but stupidity of not wanting to know more than necessary. To maintain balance, that's what kills lucidity. Not error, but polite conformity. The diplomatic smile, the right phrase at the right time. The killer of thought is artificial consensus, and yet you keep seeking it, because we prefer a shared lie to a solitary truth. Do you realize? This video isn't about being antisocial. It's about mental integrity, about rescuing your thoughts before the group dilutes them. And no, it's not about hating others. It's about not depending on them to know who you are. Because the more you depend on the reflection of others, the blurrier you become. So tell me again, are you thinking or are you repeating? Are you being you or are you being what they expect from you? If you've come this far, congratulations. Because that means something inside you hasn't been fully domesticated yet. But the real work starts now. This isn't a conclusion, it's a threshold. And what you cross to the other side depends only on you. We have to face the hardest truth. We live in a world designed for conformity. Everywhere you look, you see people going through the motions, doing things because they're expected to do them, not because they've genuinely chosen to. There's an entire system built on this expectation. Expectations of how to behave, what to think, what to say, and who to be. This system wants you to fit in, to be just another face in the crowd, to be part of the collective experience. But the moment you stop conforming, the moment you stop following the script, you're met with resistance. You're met with rejection, judgment, and isolation. That's where the price of authenticity lies. The price of thinking for yourself, of having your voice, is that you won't always be accepted. People won't always understand you. You'll lose friends. You might even lose family members. But what you gain, what you reclaim in the process, is far more valuable. Your soul, your truth, and your mental freedom. Think about it. How many of your decisions have you made because it was what you truly wanted? How many of them were based on the expectations of others? How many of your thoughts are authentically yours? And how many have been influenced, shaped, and molded by the world around you? This is the battle that most of us never confront. It's the internal war that we fight silently every day. It's the battle between being who we truly are and conforming to the expectations that others place on us. We are constantly bombarded with messages telling us who we should be, how we should act, and what we should believe. And the moment we step outside of those expectations, we face the consequences. But here's the thing. The more you embrace your authentic self, the more you begin to realize that those consequences don't matter. Because once you know who you are, once you dare to stand in your truth, the opinions of others lose their power over you. You no longer need validation from the group to feel validated. You no longer need to bend, adapt, or compromise yourself just to be accepted. And that's where real freedom lies. Freedom isn't the ability to do whatever you want. Freedom is the ability to be yourself, without fear of rejection, without the need for approval, without the fear of being alone. It's the ability to think for yourself, to speak your truth, and to live in alignment with your values, even when it's difficult. And it's in that space, that quiet space where you can finally hear your thoughts, where you can be who you truly are, that you will find peace. You will no longer be lost in the noise, lost in the chaos of external validation. You will have found your voice, your truth, and with it, your freedom. This video wasn't meant to tell you what to think or how to live. It was meant to ask you the questions that no one else is asking. It was meant to shake you awake from the illusion that sociability is the answer to everything. Sociability, when it's built on the foundation of fear, is just another form of mental slavery. And we're all part of it. But the moment you recognize that the moment you see the trap for what it is the moment you can begin to break free. So, ask yourself, how much of me is still trapped in the gaze of others? How much of me have I given up just to be accepted? And once you answer those questions, once you face the truth, then the real work begins. It's not easy, but it's necessary. It's the only way to reclaim your mind, your identity, and your freedom.